The 1930s, the Soviet Union. After investigation reveals that some members of the former Bolshevik Party question Stalin's authority, and that there is a network of party members supposedly working against him, Stalin believes that anyone with ties to the Bolsheviks or Lenin's government is a threat to his leadership and needs to go. He initiates the Great Purge, which starts with the arrests of party members, Bolsheviks, and members of the Red Army, and then grows to include Soviet peasants, members of the intelligentsia, and members of certain nationalities. By 1938, hundreds of thousands of people are executed, and the oppression becomes so extensive that it is damaging the infrastructure, economy, and even the armed forces of the Soviet state. Stalin's chief executioner during the Great Purge is Vasily Blokhin. Vasily Mikhailovich Blokhin was born on the 7th of January 1895 into a poor peasant family in the village of Gavrilovskoye, then part of the Russian Empire. From 1905 to 1910, Blokhin worked as a shepherd, and then he became a bricklayer in Moscow. During the First World War, which lasted from the 28th of July 1914 to the 11th of November 1918, Blokhin served in the Imperial Russian Army as a non-commissioned officer in the 82nd Infantry Regiment. After being wounded by the Germans, he spent several months recovering in a hospital until December 1917. By this time, Blokhin was married to Natalia Alexandrovna Blokhina, and they had a son, Nikolai Vasilievich Baranov, born in 1916. On the 24th and 25th of October 1917, Bolshevik left-wing socialist forces under Vladimir Lenin seized key government buildings and stormed the Winter Palace, then the seat of the new government in Russia's capital Petrograd, today St. Petersburg. The Bolshevik Revolution, also referred to as the Great October Socialist Revolution, was the first successful Marxist coup in history. In October 1918, Blokhin joined the Red Army. However, his ambitions soon shifted to Soviet security work. By March 1921, Blokhin became a member of the Russian Communist Party and around the same time joined the Cheka, the Soviet secret police responsible for political repression and intelligence. This early involvement with the Cheka marked the beginning of a career dedicated to enforcing the state's iron grip on opposition, a path that would define his reputation within the Soviet hierarchy. By August 1924, Blokhin carried out his first execution at Moscow's infamous Lubyanka prison. His ruthless efficiency and unwavering loyalty soon caught Stalin's eye, leading to his eventual appointment as head of the Kommandatura, an elite unit within the administrative apparatus overseeing Soviet security operations. Under Stalin's orders, Blokhin took on what the dictator termed chernaya rabota, or black work, the secret tasks of intimidation, torture, and murder. Blokhin actively participated in the first major Stalinist purge, known as the Great Terror, or the Great Purge, which lasted from 1936 to 1938. During this time, the NKVD, the Interior Ministry and Secret Police of the Soviet Union, targeted and eliminated perceived enemies of the state, including political dissidents, military leaders, and intellectuals, often through fabricated charges and forced confessions. As the purge intensified, Stalin broadened his repression to include specific ethnic groups within the Soviet Union. This led to Order 485, issued by Stalin to the NKVD, authorizing the mass arrest, interrogation, and execution of ethnic groups, with a primary focus on the mass elimination of the Polish minority living in the Soviet Union. This wave of repression targeted not only Poles in the Soviet-Polish border regions, but also Polish socialists and communists who had taken refuge in the Soviet Union. The NKVD also targeted Polish prisoners of war who had been captured during the Polish-Soviet War, which lasted from 1919 to 1921 and had never been released. These individuals, along with countless others, were falsely accused of espionage, anti-Soviet activities, or affiliation with counter-revolutionary groups. Arrests were often carried out at night, and victims were subjected to severe torture aimed at forcing false confessions. Those who survived the interrogations were either executed or sent to labor camps under horrific conditions, leading to a slow death from starvation, disease, or overwork. By the time the Polish operation ended, more than 111,000 Poles had been executed without trial, leaving countless families shattered and entire communities decimated. This brutal campaign of terror against the Polish population was only one part of Stalin's purges, which soon expanded to include prominent figures within the Soviet Union itself. In this broader wave of repression, Blokhin played a direct and personal role, executing early Bolshevik leaders such as Lev Kamenev and Grigory Zinoviev, as well as military leaders such as Marshal Tukhachevsky. He also carried out the executions of Genrikh Yagoda and Nikolai Yezhov, the former NKVD chiefs whom he had once served. Blokhin was himself spared by Stalin during the Great Purge, and for his service was awarded the Badge of Honor, a respected Soviet award given to individuals who demonstrated exceptional loyalty and commitment to the Soviet Union. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Poland found itself fighting a two-front war when the Soviet Union invaded from the east on the 17th of September. Warsaw officially surrendered to the Germans on the 28th of September, and one day later, in accordance with the secret protocol of their non-aggression pact, Germany and the Soviet Union partitioned Poland. In March 1940, following the division of Poland between Hitler and Stalin, the head of the NKVD, Lavrentiy Beria, concluded that Polish prisoners of war needed to be eliminated. In a proposal addressed to Stalin, Beria stressed that each of these detainees was simply waiting to be released to take up the fight against the Soviet Union. He argued that former officers were leading counter-revolutionary groups on newly acquired Soviet territory. In part, he was correct, as the Soviet Union had occupied and annexed half of Poland, and some Poles were indeed determined to resist. Stalin approved Beria's proposal, initiating one of the most brutal operations against Polish prisoners of war, with Blokhin playing a major role. Blokhin's most infamous act came in April 1940, when he personally executed thousands of Polish prisoners held at the Ostashkov camp located near the Katyn forest in western Russia. Setting an ambitious goal of 300 executions per night, he implemented a system for processing the prisoners efficiently. Each prisoner was led alone to a small antechamber painted red and known as the Leninist room for a brief identification. Afterward, they were handcuffed and escorted into a neighboring execution room. This room was designed specifically for the task, with padded walls for soundproofing, a sloped concrete floor with a drain and hose for cleaning, and a log wall where prisoners stood. Blokhin waited inside, dressed in his executioner gear, a leather butcher's apron, a leather hat, and long leather gloves. Without any hearings, sentence readings, or formalities, each prisoner was held by guards while Blokhin shot them once in the base of the skull using a German-made pistol, chosen for its reliability during high-volume executions. The use of a German pistol also provided a level of plausible deniability in case the bodies were found, as this type of gun was often carried by German police and intelligence agents. An estimated 30 local NKVD agents, guards, and drivers were assigned to escort prisoners to the basement, confirm identification, then remove the bodies and hose down the blood after each execution. Although some executions were carried out by Andrei Rubanov, a senior lieutenant of state security, Blokhin was the primary executioner, and true to his reputation, preferred to work continuously and at a rapid pace. Following the NKVD policy and the overall secretive nature of the operation, executions were carried out at night, beginning at dusk and continuing until just before dawn. The bodies were loaded onto covered trucks through a rear door in the execution chamber and transported twice each night to the nearby village of Mednoye. Blokhin had arranged for a bulldozer and 2 NKVD drivers to assist with body disposal at an unfenced site. Each night, 24 to 25 trenches were dug, measuring 8 to 10 meters in length to hold that night's corpses, and each trench was covered over before dawn. Blokhin and his team worked without pause for 10 hours each night, with Blokhin himself executing an average of one prisoner every 3 minutes. At the end of each night, Blokhin handed out vodka to his men, partly as a reward for their obedience, and partly to help them cope with the psychological toll of the night's grim work. On the 27th of April 1940, Blokhin secretly received the Order of the Red Banner, one of the Soviet Union's highest military honors, for his what they called service in the operation. His tally of 7,000 executions in 28 days remains the most organized and systematic mass murder by a single individual on record, earning him a place in the Guinness World Records. In total, approximately 22,000 Polish prisoners were killed during the Katyn Massacre, a tragedy that continues to cast a long shadow over Polish-Russian relations to this day. Stalin died on the 5th of March 1953, reportedly from a stroke. Following his death, Blokhin was forcibly retired from the NKVD, officially due to poor health. He was one of the many Stalinist figures removed from power by the new leadership who sought to sideline Stalin's most loyal operatives. In November 1954, Blokhin's rank of Major General was stripped from him during Nikita Khrushchev's de-Stalinization campaigns, as Khrushchev, by then First Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, deemed him unworthy of holding a general's rank due to his involvement in mass executions. Vasily Blokhin was 60 years old when he died on the 3rd of February 1955 in Moscow. In the last months of his life, he struggled with alcoholism and mental instability, and the official cause of death was listed as suicide. However, his personal files recorded that he died of a heart attack. Blokhin's fate reflected the political changes sweeping the Soviet Union after Stalin's death. Many of Stalin's closest allies were gradually removed or pushed aside. This shift became clear in February 1956 when Nikita Khrushchev delivered his famous secret speech at the 20th Party Congress. In his speech, Khrushchev condemned Stalin's cult of personality, openly criticizing the brutal purges and climate of fear that had ruled the Soviet society. By rejecting Stalin's legacy, Khrushchev began the process of de-Stalinization, setting the Soviet Union on a new course, one with no place for mass murderers like Vasily Blokhin. There were no tears shed for Vasily Blokhin. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.